President Biden has been, without a doubt, the best president in my lifetime.
Our country's future is in your hands.
So please, be the leader we know you are. Pass the torch, Joe.
Pass the torch.
Pass the torch.
Pass the torch.
Well, there we are. Some Grassroots voices. That's the television advertisement. It will be broadcast tomorrow on NBC's Morning Joe programme. Highly influential within the Democratic Party, of course. The president reportedly watches. Well, he does more than that. He phoned in a couple of weeks ago himself. Now, one of the founders of the Pass the Torch campaign is Aaron Regunberg, a Democrat and former member of the Rhode Island House of Representatives. We could talk to him now. Hello to you, Aaron. Thanks for joining us on Times Radio Breakfast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, we listened to a little piece of that advert, and you can just tell from the tone that you do it with a heavy heart.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. President Biden has been, without a doubt, the best president in my lifetime. And he is also, without a doubt, not our best standard bearer for the 2024 election. And that is what our group Pass the Torch has been working to do, to represent the 2/3 of Democrats who believe that it is time for President Biden to pass the torch so that we can have our best possible chance to beat Donald Trump in November.
Okay, who's involved in the campaign? How representative are you of the grassroots?
This is just a group of dozens and dozens of volunteers who've come together, been working over the past few weeks to help regular Democratic voters make their voices heard in what has become a really critical crossroads moment in our nation's history. So we've had tens of thousands of Democrats make phone calls to their reps and senators, tens of thousands more doing online actions. I just got back from Washington, D.C., where we had a rally in front of the White House with hundreds of folks. And again, it's about making sure that regular Democrats are actually heard in this moment.
And what about the funding? I mean, these adverts don't come cheap, and we hear that some of the funding has dried up for the core presidential campaign. Is any of that being diverted to your kind of campaign to get him to step aside?
So Pass the Torch, we've had, I think, something like over 350 donors contribute to both support this work and also through our website set money aside for the eventual nominee. There have been folks who've said, we don't want to keep investing in Biden, but we want to keep contributing to the eventual nominee. Again, it speaks to the reality that there are millions of Democrats across the country right now who understand that losing this election is not an option, right? Our party has been saying for years that this election is existential in nature, right? We're up against a movement that hasn't just dabbled in violent authoritarianism. Violent authoritarianism is at the core of its identity. And when the stakes are that high, it shouldn't be controversial to say that the Democratic Party needs to put forward a strong nominee who gives us the best possible chance of defeating Donald Trump.
Okay, so clearly you don't think that the current president can do that anymore. So we get on to the who, but first of all, the how. Just listening to that advert, you're paying tribute to what he did in 2020 for the Democrats by beating Donald Trump. How do you do it if he doesn't want to go? How do you do it and preserve the president's dignity?
Well, I mean, we do want to be very clear. Again, there's no contradiction in those two statements, that he's been the best president in my lifetime and he's not our best standard bearer right now, right? He achieved incredible things in his first term, and we all owe him a serious debt of gratitude for that work. And at the same time, he was consistently behind in the polls before his disastrous debate performance, right? He's now losing in every single swing state. Americans have made up their minds about him, and he's demonstrated that he cannot effectively communicate our message, which our nominee must be able to do to have a fighting chance of beating Donald Trump. And so what we've been saying is, trying to get this message directly to President Biden that, like George Washington before him, it's time to pass the torch, to be the hero, the public servant, the leader that we know that he is.
Interesting there, just listening to your language, Aaron. Maybe it was a slip. You referred to his first term. That would perhaps presuppose that he might be having a second one. You don't want him to have one. So who would it be? Who's your ideal candidate? It's got to be the vice president, hasn't it?
Well, let me first say it's not that we don't want him to have a second term. That would be ideal. Um, it's just that is very clear. The data is very clear that we're not on track for that, and we need to be real when we're dealing with the kind of threat that we're dealing. I mean, democracy is on the ballot. Abortion access is on the ballot. A livable future is on the ballot. We need to be real about where we're at. As far as what comes next, I'll say,
Yeah.
pass the torch as a group. We don't have a position on what comes next. The focus of pass the torch is getting President Biden to step up and do the right thing here, because we think, frankly, any of the options that come next give us a much better chance of winning in November.
Well, I mean, just let me pick you up on that, Aaron. I mean, that's quite an indictment. Anyone would do better. I mean, you really think that Joe Biden has fallen apart, don't you? And was the tipping point, the debate with Donald Trump last month?
Well, I think it's important to be clear that the weaknesses we're talking about right here are not representative of the Democratic Party. We don't have a Democratic problem in this election. Democrats have been winning special elections. Our swing state senators are polling great, double digits above Biden. Do not like Donald Trump. They do not like his horrifying and dangerous agenda. Our problem is not the Democratic Party or our message. Our problem is one individual at the top of the ticket, which is actually really good news, because that is a problem that we can actually solve. And so, yeah, I think that any of the potential Democratic leaders who could get out there and consistently deliver our message, that could do 10 interviews a day, that could actively campaign, that are not historically unpopular, they're going to be able to beat Donald Trump. Vice President Kamala Harris, I think, is the most likely option. And let's be very clear, I think she would be a phenomenal nominee, right? She's a capable, strong Black woman who has skills as a former prosecutor to be able to effectively prosecute a case against a 34-count convicted felon, Donald Trump. That's going to give us a really good shot of winning, like we have to, because truly the stakes have never been higher.
Okay, so as I'm understanding it, the campaign is not behind anyone to replace Joe Biden. It's just that he steps aside, and then the Democratic Party will go through its processes and pick who should go next. But personally, Aaron, from what you're saying, you seem to believe it could be the vice president. It could be Kamala Harris.
Again, personally,
Yeah.
I think that's the most likely scenario, and that's a scenario I think that gives us a great fighting chance of winning, which we currently are not on a trajectory to have.
But you're not in any way, shape, or form connected to her people, so to speak, because there are these discussions that, yes, of course, she's staying very, very quiet, saying nothing at all, loyal, of course, to the boss, to the president. But it is being said that her people are quietly and surreptitiously pushing her agenda.
I wish that were true. I haven't been seeing that. We would like that to be true. Again, we're really grateful for the Democrats that have found the courage to step up and speak out. It's not an easy thing to do. As you mentioned, I'm a former state representative, so I remember the complicated calculus of speaking out against your party leadership. But again, when the stakes are this high, when we're dealing with the threat of fascism, all of those considerations should go out the window. We need folks to be stepping up and speaking out and saying, President Biden, it is time to pass the torch.
Okay, well, let's see what the reaction from the White House is tomorrow morning, almost afternoon here in the UK, when that ad formally airs on that influential Morning Joe program. Aaron Regunberg, very good talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. That's Aaron Regunberg, one of the co-founders of the Pass the Torch campaign, which is urging President Biden, it's from within the Democratic Party, urging President Biden to step aside now for the good of the party and the good of the country.
That's an extraordinary story, isn't it, Dermot? That a campaign group is taking out adverts on television, specifically against Joe Biden. This is a grassroots Democrat campaign. It's not a Republican campaign. It is from within, and that is the most scarring thing. Interesting, they've had 350 donors that are supporting the campaign, but also supporting campaign funds for whoever takes the ticket if Joe Biden does step down.
Well, that's the point, isn't
so
it?
they're fundraising as well,
Yeah,
which
well,
is
that's
extraordinary.
the point, isn't it? That we've heard of major donors support drying up for Joe Biden. They're having difficulty now accessing the huge funds you need to run a presidential campaign, and this therefore has, the media attack on it, but it also has the money behind it, doesn't it? That could be diverted.
Yeah, certainly, and that assumes that Kamala Harris is not their automatic pick, as Aaron was suggesting to you. Their campaign funds that wouldn't be allocated at the moment unless laws are changed to anyone but Kamala Harris.